Hi, Chess.com. I'm International Master Teddy Coleman, and I'm here to walk you through a game that was played recently by Grandmasters Boris Gelfand and Ernesto Inarkiev, two 2700 very strong Grandmasters. Now, while the game was played by such high-caliber players, it actually illustrates a very basic principle of chess, one that many of us learn when we're kids just starting out to play, and that is that very frequently, bishops are better than knights. In this game, what you'll see is that Inarkiev either forgets this or misevaluates his chances, and he willingly spends 2 moves to give away his dark-squared bishop for Gelfand's knight. And Gelfand makes him pay very dearly for it, in a game that culminates in a very violent and vicious attack. So let's take a look at this game to see what not to do with our bishop, and then also what we should do in case our opponent willingly gives us such a gift. So to start out the game, Gelfand played d4, and we ended up in mainline Queen's Indian play. So in this position, Gelfand opted to go g3, which is one of the main ideas in this position. White wants to put the bishop on g2 to combat black on the light squares, and black went ahead and played this move, bishop a6, another very typical idea. Now, for those of you who aren't really familiar with these positions, the idea here is that black is tickling this white pawn on c4. Because that white bishop is going to g2, that pawn ends up being a little bit loose, and black can apply a bit of pressure and make white uncomfortable. So white starts out by defending, and black continues to put pressure there with his move d5. White can continue normally. Black can't think about taking on c4 because of the move knight e5. So in this position, black plays another standard idea, bishop b4 check. Now, the point here is actually not to exchange the piece, it's really to disrupt the coordination of white's pieces. In an ideal world, white would love to go move the knight on c3 and put his bishop on b2 and have very very harmonious development. However, because this bishop b4 check, one of those pieces has to go to d2, and it's going to be misplaced. In this case, Gelfand plays bishop to d2, and after bishop to e7, this bishop is a little bit silly on d2, and you'll see that later in the game he has to reroute it back through c1 to b2, losing a tempo. Gelfand takes because now that pawn was getting a bit loose, and then proceeds to just castle. So this is a position that's still very much part of theory. It was played multiple times in the candidates matches. You may remember actually that there was a game where Sergei Karyakin was white, Hikaru Nakamura was black in the candidates matches, and Nakamura lost. This was early in the tournament. It set Karyakin up to be one of the leaders and eventually win the tournament. And although the opening was fine for black, Hikaru blundered later on. In this case, Gelfand just continues developing normally. His idea is really to develop and control the center. Black is trying to do the same thing. And at this point, he realizes that he can plop that knight on e5. You'll see as the game goes on, that knight is a real monster there. It's sitting in the center. It's got a nice outpost, and it's really difficult for black to kick it. Although black can play f6 in some positions, it's a bit weakening, and as you'll see in the game, it ends up being extremely weakening when Inarkiev actually plays it. Inarkiev also reroutes his bishop to b7. He's trying to control the center and preparing the move knight b to d7. And at this point, Gelfand realizes, yep, that bishop is silly on d2. I need to put it on b2, and I'm going to take a tempo to do that. So far, we're all completely in theory until this point. Now, in the candidates matches, Anish Giri with white played the move knight to d3. This move, knight to d3, really serves to control a lot of the dark squares for white. And it's a bit of a retreat, but very, very solid. And in this case, Boris Gelfand goes aggressive. He plays the move f4. The idea here is simple. He wants to anchor that knight into e5 with those 2 pawns on d4 and f4. And it's very hard for black to disrupt it. Now, the drawback here is that white's position also starts having some holes in it. So, as you can see, because of the move f4, that e4 square is a bit weak, and maybe a candidate for Inarkiev to later put his knight in there. Future games, I'm sure, will decide, whether this move is overly ambitious or a solid move for white. But in this game, it seemed to work well. Inarkiev here plays c5, a move that's very natural, one that he's been preparing for a while, because he wants to combat white in the center. And white plays e3. Again, just trying to hold on that knight. You want to have that anchor on e5. Now in this position, Inarkiev had a bunch of moves that I think are far more normal than the way that he continued the game. So, playing a move like rook to c8 or something, continuing his development, that makes a lot of sense to me. However, he ends up playing this move, c takes d4, which, okay, that move is fine, it's not a bad move, but his follow-up is what I really don't like. Because in this position, he has this really good bishop on d6, and he opts to trade it for white's knight on c3. Again, when we're all young, we learn bishops are better than knights, and in this case, he's spending 2 moves to go and give up his bishop for that knight, and it ends up being a really bad trade. So after rook c1, he goes ahead and takes it, rook takes, and he tries to justify it by putting that knight on e4. He sees Gelfand has this knight on e5, I'm jealous of it, it's an amazing knight, I want my own knight in the center, and that's sort of all well and good, but the problem here is that it comes at too high of a price. So after rook c2, the main imbalance in this position is that white has this dark squared bishop and black has this knight. Now, you may look at this position right now and say, well, it doesn't look so bad for black, right? That bishop on b2 isn't doing a whole lot, it's just sort of defending its own pawn on d4. And that may be true for now, but as you'll see in the game, this bishop has a ton of potential, and there are a few ways that it can become active. So the very first way is that, black can never, ever, ever think about playing a move like knight takes e5. That's terrible. After d takes e5, you can see now this bishop is becoming alive. White has ideas about maybe f5 and attacking the king on, black's king, and that bishop is just going to be too much of a monster. Another key idea that comes up very, very quickly for white is that this bishop can go from b2 to a3, and that a3 f8 diagonal is actually really pesky for the black pieces. And, I think Kiev really would have hoped to, or really wished that he had kept that bishop on d6 so that white's bishop can never go there. In this position, I think Kiev also keeps going sort of awry. He could play a move like knight d to f6 that sort of seems very natural. He's holding that knight on e4, he's developing his piece further. That seems to make sense. But instead he plays this move knight f8, which is too passive. It's really, he's going backwards. I don't even know where he intends that knight to go. And he ends up in trouble very quickly after white goes queen h5. And now this pawn on f7 is really, really loose, and it's really difficult to find a good way to defend it. The most natural move, queen e7, falls prey immediately to this bishop a3 tactic. Already we see this bishop is coming alive, and after a move like queen takes a3, queen takes f7, black is going to lose a pawn. So that's just simply impossible. So Kiev plays g6, which, the computer agrees with it. It seems like a solid move, but already you can see that these dark squares are becoming very loose for black, and it's something that he probably wasn't happy to play. And Gelfand sticks his queen further into Kiev's position, and is just sort of eyeing those dark squares menacingly. In this position was probably Kiev's, last moment where he really let go of the game. If he plays a normal move like rook c8, maybe he's doing okay, after something like takes, white still has a very favorable position here, but already, the game's not over. There still is a lot of fight left to be had. That move made a lot more sense. Instead, he plays the move f6, a very weakening move. Now, all of a sudden, his king is opening up, and Gelfand pounces on him with a very nice shot of bishop takes e4. If black were to go d takes e4, well, knight g4, and now white has these very dangerous ideas of d5. This bishop's coming alive, the f6 pawn is weak. If something like bishop d5, f5 is coming, black's king is really getting cracked open, and he's very uncomfortable. So instead, Kiev he takes the knight back, but Gelfand has this beautiful shot, f5. That pawn is going right into Kiev's position. There's nothing he can do about it. It's a valiant warrior. If Kiev were to take Gelfand's bishop, Gelfand would follow it up with f6. You can see that there's queen g7 checkmate threats. There's f7 threats. And you can see, Komodo thinks the best move here for black is the ridiculous-looking rook to e7. At which point, white could just go ahead and take the rook and follow it up with this nice shot, bishop a3, which, if black were to try and take the bishop, rook c7, Black is getting checkmated. These pieces are way too angry and aggressive. So to avoid that, Inarkiev finds the best way to defend, which is rook e7. He knows that he needs to stop this pawn from getting to e7 and defend his 7th rank. And Gelfand is just going to play the cool and calm bishop g2. Let's take a moment and just take stock of this position, because at this point, everything has gone correct for white. Nothing has gone right for black. White has aggressive pieces. His queen is on h6. The pawn is on f5. He's attacking Black's king. The rook on f1 is powerful. His bishops are powerful. And that dark squared bishop is completely unopposed. On the flip side, Black has some undeveloped pieces like the rook on a8. The knight on f8 is extremely passive and not doing anything except sort of defending. The bishop on b7 is, eating its own pawn on d5. He doesn't have any pieces past his own 7th rank. It's really a disaster for Black. There's not a whole lot going on. So what he tries to do is play e4. So he wants to keep the position as closed as possible because he knows that Gelfand is ahead in development and has active aggressive pieces. And of course, when we are ahead in development and have these active aggressive pieces, we want to open up our enemy's king as much as possible. So after bishop e3, rook f7, Gelfand goes ahead and takes that pawn on g6, again opening these lines. That bishop on a3 is really strong, attacking the knight on f8. And after takes, knight takes g6. This is maybe the one point in the game when you could criticize Gelfand for not making the best move. The best shot here is actually playing bishop h3. Black has no good way to stop this bishop from coming into e6. You can see the computer evaluation is devastating. After a move like bishop c8, trying to stop bishop e6, rook c6, and Black is quickly going to find himself completely toast in this position. Bishop d6, that bishop is coming into e5. There's nothing he can do. The computer says the only thing here is to give up the queen somehow. It suggests queen e8, check, and takes. And this is clearly just a complete and total disaster for Black, and one where they would shake hands immediately. Instead of that, Gelfand plays the second best move. He goes rook f2. Still an extremely strong move. It's very natural. He's putting the rook on the open file and getting ready to attack the king. Can't really complain too much for that move, and in the end, it didn't really matter in the game. Inarkiev played queen d7, and of course, we got to get both bishops involved and active. There's nothing Black can do here. These pieces are way too active and aggressive. Bishop e7, he tries a last-ditch effort with the move e3, just attacking that rook, maybe, hoping that Gelfand would miscalculate something, but of course, a player of his caliber isn't going to let Inarkiev off the hook. So after a few accurate moves, Inarkiev is forced to resign, and Gelfand is the winner. There are too many threats here. He's going queen g7 check, he's going bishop e6 check. After a move like queen c7, bishop e6 will just be game over. So Inarkiev threw in the towel. Perhaps his ego was a bit bruised, and it was time to save up energy for the next game in their match. So what can we learn from this game? So I think this game really shows that, even at a top 2700 level, the lessons that we learn as kids playing chess are still extremely valuable and meaningful. So hold on to your bishops and think really, really hard before giving up a bishop for a knight. In some cases it works. In this one, it clearly did not. And if your opponent really gives you that gift, make sure that you open up your opponent's king, that you use that bishop to its fullest. So in this case, this bishop went all the way from b2, where it was doing nothing, through a3, e7, f6, attacking that king. It's completely unopposed. There's nothing Black can do about it. Make sure to use that bishop to its fullest. Again, this game is just a really clear and concise illustration of why we learned that rule when we're kids. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something from it, and we'll see you again next time. Thanks.